I stared at the conference registration email, my coffee growing cold in my hand. There it was, clear as day. Dr. James Park, MD, fax, keynote speaker, Boston Medical Symposium on Surgical Excellence. The same symposium I'd been planning for 8 months. The same symposium where I'd invited the country's leading trauma surgeons to discuss the future of emergency medicine. The same symposium I owned. My program coordinator, Rachel, noticed my expression from across my office. Dr. Chen? Everything all right? I turned my laptop toward her, watching her eyes widen as she read his name. Does he know? No, I said, allowing myself a small smile. He has no idea that Dr. Maya Chen, chief of trauma surgery at Boston Metro, is the same woman who left him 7 years ago. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly. My office overlooked the Charles River, morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. This view, this position, this life I'd built from nothing after walking away from 12 years of being told I wasn't good enough. James had always dismissed my surgical instincts as too emotional, pushed me toward research, safe and quiet where I couldn't hurt anyone with impulsive decisions. His voice still echoed sometimes, especially in my early days back in the OR. Maya, you're too reactive. Surgery requires cold precision, not feelings. This is exactly why I worry about you operating. I'd believed him then. God help me. I'd believed every word. For 12 years of marriage, I'd watched my confidence erode, procedure by procedure, patient by patient, until I couldn't trust my own hands anymore. The day everything changed was seared into my memory. A 42-year-old mother, internal bleeding from a car accident. I'd assessed her in the ER, my instincts screaming that she needed immediate surgery. James, the renowned cardiac surgeon, happened to be consulting that night. He'd overruled me, insisting on more imaging first, his voice dripping with that familiar condescension. We don't rush into surgery based on hunches, Maya. This is why research suits you better. She died while waiting for the CT scan. The autopsy showed a splenic laceration that would have been easily repairable if we'd operated immediately. My judgment had been correct. His caution had been fatal. The board review cleared me completely, but James never apologized. Instead, he suggested I take a leave of absence, that maybe clinical work was too stressful for me. That night, lying next to him as he slept peacefully, I finally saw it clearly. He didn't want a partner. He wanted someone small enough to make him feel big. 3 months later, I filed for divorce with nothing but my medical license and a plan. Rachel's voice pulled me back to the present. What are you going to do? I looked around my office, at the commendations on the wall, the photos of my trauma team, the stack of research papers we'd published on compassionate surgical care. Boston Metro's trauma program had gone from struggling to nationally recognized in 5 years. I'd done that, not by being less emotional, but by channeling that empathy into surgical excellence. I'm going to run the best surgical symposium this city has ever seen, I said, straightening the papers on my desk. And I'm going to personally introduce Dr. James Park to our keynote stage. Rachel grinned. He won't know what hit him. No, I agreed, pulling up the conference schedule. But that's not why I'm doing this. This isn't about revenge. It's about finally proving to myself what I knew all along, that caring deeply doesn't make you a worse surgeon. It makes you a better one. As I reviewed the symposium details, a notification popped up on my phone. James had posted on LinkedIn about his upcoming presentation, honored to speak on objective decision-making in high-stakes surgery. He'd written, "Sometimes our greatest teachers are our failures." A chill ran through me. James always had a talent for unintentional irony. If only he knew that his greatest failure, the wife he'd convinced was too emotional to save lives, was about to teach him the most important lesson of his career. But as I scanned the attendee list, doubt crept in. James was meticulous about researching every venue, every conference. How had he not discovered my involvement? I'd used my maiden name professionally, but we had mutual colleagues, shared medical circles. Something wasn't adding up, and I had a sinking feeling this apparent oversight might not be as accidental as it seemed. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Lily, who worked in the ER downstairs. Just saw James's post. "You okay?" I typed back. "Better than okay. We need to talk tonight." The hospital's main conference room hummed with activity 2 weeks later. I walked through, checking every detail: the lighting for the main auditorium, the screens for the presentations, the arrangements for the live surgical demonstrations. I'd built my reputation on precision, and this event would be flawless. My phone vibrated. Another message from Lily. Saw James's latest post. He's definitely planning something. I clicked the link. There he was, professionally lit in his office at Harbor Medical Center, his signature confidence radiating through the screen. Preparing a special presentation for Boston Metro's symposium, the caption read, "Time to address some hard truths about emotion-driven surgical decisions." My hands tightened on my phone. Hard truths. That phrase. It was pure James, the same words he'd used countless times during our marriage. "I'm just telling you some hard truths, Maya. Someone has to." I was so focused on the screen, I almost collided with Rachel, who was hurrying toward me with a worried expression. "Dr. Chen, we might have a problem," she said quietly. "I just got off the phone with Dr. Park's assistant. He's requesting a private conference room the day before his presentation. Says he needs to prepare and meet with some special guests." That wasn't unusual for keynote speakers, but something felt wrong. James never did anything without calculation, without strategy. "There's more," Rachel continued. His assistant specifically asked about the symposium's founder, very interested in whether they'd be personally attending. I sat down on a nearby chair, my mind racing. He knows, I thought. Or at least suspects. The realization sent me back to the beginning, to my first days after leaving James. I'd been waitressing at a diner in Cambridge, taking online courses to keep my medical license active, living in a studio apartment that smelled like the Thai restaurant downstairs. My first chance back in an OR came from a small community hospital in Somerville. Appendectomy. Routine. Simple. My hands had shaken as I scrubbed in. James's voice in my head. "You'll never be confident enough for this, Maya. It's not in your nature." But Dr. Robert Kim, the attending surgeon, had watched me work and said something that changed everything. "You have excellent instincts. Your caution isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The surgeons who scare me are the ones who are never afraid." More opportunities followed. Each surgery built my confidence back, piece by piece. I'd been careful about my visibility, publishing under my maiden name, working in hospitals where James's network didn't reach. It wasn't fear, I told myself. It was strategy. I wanted to succeed on my own merits, not as James Park's ex-wife who couldn't cut it. "Should we cancel his speaking slot?" Rachel asked, bringing me back to the present. "No," I said firmly. That's exactly what the old Maya would do. Run away, avoid confrontation. I stood up, smoothing my white coat. "But we need to be prepared. Get me everything you can about his recent presentations, especially any mentions of surgical judgment controversies." As Rachel hurried off, I walked to the window overlooking the hospital's main entrance. This was my hospital now. My program. James's career, meanwhile, had plateaued. I'd heard through colleagues that Harbor Medical had been losing trauma cases, that his residents complained about his teaching style. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Dr. Chen, it's Marcus Johnson. I used to be a nurse practitioner in Dr. Park's department." My heart skipped. Marcus had worked with James during our marriage, had seen everything. "You need to know something," he said, his voice tense. "Dr. Park's been asking questions about Boston Metro's trauma program, about who built it, who runs it, and he's been meeting with Dr. Vincent Shaw from MedTech Partners." The blood drained from my face. Vincent Shaw, the medical entrepreneur who'd tried to buy out our symposium last year, offering money to turn it into a pharmaceutical showcase. The attempt had failed, but it had cost us some corporate sponsors. How long have they been meeting? At least 3 times in the past month. "Dr. Chen, I think he's planning something big at the symposium. Something to do with your program's funding structure." After thanking Marcus and ending the call, I sat at my desk, hands trembling slightly. James had always been obsessed with winning, with being the smartest person in the room. If he thought he could use this symposium to undermine everything I'd built. A knock interrupted my thoughts. My head of surgical education, Dr. Sarah Williams, entered carrying a thick folder. "You asked me to review the speaker agreements," she said. I found something interesting. A clause about conduct detrimental to the symposium's mission. If properly invoked, it gives us significant leverage. As she explained, a plan started forming. If James wanted to play games, he was about to learn that I wasn't the same woman who'd left him 7 years ago. But first, I needed to make a call to someone who knew exactly how James operated when he felt threatened. I scrolled through my contacts to a number I'd kept but never used. It was time to call Dr. Robert Kim, the surgeon who'd been James's mentor before their very public falling out. Dr. Kim suggested we meet at a quiet cafe in Beacon Hill, away from hospital politics. As I walked in, I spotted him immediately, same kind eyes. Though his hair had gone completely silver, he stood as I approached, offering a warm handshake. "Maya," he said, "you look well. Success suits you." I settled into the chair across from him, noting how different this felt from my last interaction with him 7 years ago, when I was still James's wife, still playing the role of the supportive spouse who smiled politely at medical dinners. "Thank you for meeting me," I began. But Dr. Kim held up a hand. "Before we get into this, I need to know, are you ready for what James might do? Because he's not the same man you left. He's desperate." I thought about the James I'd known, controlled, calculated, always 3 steps ahead. What happened after I left? Dr. Kim's expression darkened. It started small. He became more aggressive with residents, less willing to consider alternative approaches. Then he made a series of bad surgical calls, convinced he could never be wrong. When I tried to intervene, he accused me of betraying him, of trying to undermine his reputation. "That sounds familiar," I murmured, remembering similar accusations during our marriage. The breaking point came when he lost the Morrison case, a pediatric cardiac surgery. The family specifically requested he be removed from their daughter's care, citing his inability to listen to their concerns. I tried to help him see this as a learning opportunity, but Dr. Kim shook his head. He fought me every step. By the time it was over, half our shared research projects had fallen apart. I processed this information, and now he's meeting with Vincent Shaw. Ah, Dr. Kim's eyes narrowed. That makes sense. Shaw's been looking for an entry into the trauma surgery space. Your program's success hasn't gone unnoticed. But why would James get involved? What's in it for him? Redemption, perhaps. Or revenge. Probably both. Dr. Kim pulled out his phone, showing me recent statistics from Harbor Medical. Their trauma numbers were down 40% from last year. He needs a win, Maya. And if he can't have one of his own, he'll try to take yours. The realization hit hard. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally understood something about James that had eluded me during our marriage. "You know," I said slowly, "when I left him, I thought I was the broken one. He'd spent years convincing me I was incompetent without his guidance, but he was the one who couldn't function without someone to control." Dr. Kim nodded solemnly. "And that's exactly why you need to be careful. I've seen the speaker agreement you're working with. It's solid, but James has excellent lawyers." I smiled, thinking about the additional precautions I'd been taking. "Actually, that's not the only protection I have. Would you like to hear my plan?" For the next hour, I laid out my strategy. Dr. Kim listened intently, occasionally offering suggestions or pointing out potential weaknesses. By the time we finished, he was shaking his head in admiration. "You've thought of everything," he said. "But there's one thing you should know about Shaw. His last 3 acquisition attempts all used the same tactic. He looks for internal divisions, people he can turn against each other. That won't work at Boston Metro. My team is solid." "Your team isn't the target," Dr. Kim interrupted. "Think about it. What's the one thing James knows better than anyone else? Your vulnerabilities, your past. He'll try to use that to create doubt about your leadership." A memory surfaced. James at a hospital fundraiser, skillfully turning my colleagues against each other with carefully placed comments, all while maintaining his image as the concerned mentor. "There's something else," Dr. Kim added, his voice lower. "James has been asking about your sister Lily, specifically about her role at Boston Metro." My blood ran cold. Lily worked in my ER, had been there through the worst of my marriage to James, had seen what he'd done to me. "He wouldn't," I started, but Dr. Kim's expression stopped me. "He already has. Lily received an email yesterday from Shaw's office. They're offering her a position at a new trauma center they're planning to open, contingent on certain changes at Boston Metro. I sat back, stunned. Lily hadn't mentioned anything. Was she actually considering it? My phone buzzed. Rachel. Emergency. Dr. Park's team just requested access to our patient outcome data for his presentation. As I stood to leave, Dr. Kim caught my arm. Maya, one more thing. The night you left James, he wasn't just angry, he was terrified. For the first time in his life, someone had seen through him completely. Don't underestimate how much that fear drives him now. I nodded, gathering my things. Thank you, Robert. For everything. Just be careful, he called after me. And Maya? Whatever happens at the symposium, make sure you're ready for the spotlight. One way or another, this is going to be very public. I found Lily in the ER break room, surrounded by patient charts. She looked up with a smile that faltered when she saw my expression. We need to talk, I said, closing the door. About your meeting with James. The color drained from her face, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she stood, walking to the window overlooking the ambulance bay. I was going to tell you, she said quietly. Before or after the symposium where he's planning to destroy everything we've built? My voice came out sharper than intended. Lily turned, eyes flashing. Is that what you think? That I'd help him hurt you after everything he put you through? Put us through? I remembered the nights Lily had spent at my apartment after I left James, helping me put myself back together. She'd been my anchor, my constant support. Then why meet with him? Why keep it secret? Lily sank into a chair. Because I wanted to understand what he was planning. Because, she hesitated, because I needed to see for myself if he'd changed. And? He's worse, she said quietly, more desperate. He talked about Shaw's offer, tried to convince me it was in everyone's best interest, that you were in over your head with the program's growth. She pulled out her phone, showing me a recording app. I documented everything. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by shame. Lily, I'm so sorry. I should have. She cut me off with a fierce hug. Don't you dare apologize. James's greatest talent was always making us doubt ourselves and each other. I needed him to believe I was considering his offer. As we broke apart, I noticed a file on her desk marked Shaw Medical Partners, Acquisition Strategy, their complete playbook, Lily said with a grim smile. James was very thorough in explaining their plans. Apparently, they're planning to use the symposium to announce a partnership, presenting it as a done deal to pressure your board. I sat heavily. Can they do that? They can try. But James made a mistake. Lily's eyes gleamed. He was so busy trying to manipulate me. He forgot I'm not the same person either. I've learned a few things about hospital politics. She opened her laptop, showing me documents. Shaw's company is overextended. They've leveraged heavily for this acquisition push. If their announcement fails, if they're publicly embarrassed, their stock tanks. And James would be finished in the medical community? I finished, understanding dawning. No one trusts a failed corporate medicine scheme. Lily paused. But Maya, there's something else you need to know. Something about why James is really doing this. She pulled out an old photograph. My wedding day. I was beaming at the camera, young and naive, while James stood beside me, his hand possessively on my shoulder. Look at the background, Lily said softly. I squinted. Behind us, partially obscured, stood a woman I vaguely remembered, one of James's former patients. She was speaking to Dr. Kim, both looking concerned. That's Dr. Patricia Morrison, Lily explained, the mother of the pediatric patient who had James removed from her daughter's case. She's on the symposium's advisory board. My breath caught. She's attending? More than that. Her foundation is one of our major sponsors, and they specifically chose your program because of your emphasis on compassionate surgical care. The implications crashed over me. James wasn't just after my program. He was trying to prove that his way was right all along. That cold, detached surgery was superior. If he could discredit a successful compassionate care program, he validated everything he'd ever done. To me, to his residents, to everyone he'd ever made feel small. Rachel burst into the room. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. Dr. Park just posted a preview of his symposium speech. He's talking about you. I grabbed Lily's laptop, pulling up James's social media. There he was, perfectly lit in his office, speaking directly to camera. At Boston Metro's surgical symposium, I'll be sharing a deeply personal case study about the dangers of emotion-driven surgical decisions. Sometimes our greatest professional setbacks come from trusting instinct over evidence, from letting feelings override protocol. But truly excellent surgeons learn from these failures. My hands clenched. Classic James, positioning himself as the objective voice of reason while subtly undermining emotional approaches to medicine. But this time, something was different. This time, I saw through every word, every calculated gesture. He's scared, I realized aloud. This isn't just about professional rivalry. He's terrified that if I succeed, it proves everything he told me was a lie. Lily touched my arm gently. So, what are we going to do about it? I looked between my sister and Rachel, feeling a surge of gratitude for their loyalty. James had spent years trying to isolate me, making me believe I was alone. He never understood that real leadership wasn't about control. It was about trust. We're going to give him exactly what he wants, I said, a plan crystallizing. A chance to present his case. But first I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a contact I'd been avoiding. I think it's time to talk to Dr. Patricia Morrison. Dr. Morrison chose to meet at her office in the Morrison Children's Foundation building. All glass walls and natural light. Everything designed to feel open and healing. It couldn't have been more different from James's preference for traditional medical authority. I've been following your work at Boston Metro, Patricia said as I sat down. Though I didn't realize until recently that you were behind the Compassionate Care Initiative. You've been discreet. I wanted the program to succeed on its own merits, I replied, not as a reaction to my past. Patricia's expression softened. I understand that better than most. When I removed James from my daughter's care, it wasn't about fees or reputation. It was about his inability to see her as a person, not just a diagnosis. She leaned forward. The day I made that decision, I overheard him telling a surgical resident that parental anxiety was noise to be managed, not information to be considered. My daughter was terrified, and he couldn't even acknowledge her fear. My heart ached, remembering similar dismissals. He told me that empathy was a surgical liability, which is exactly why I've been waiting for you to contact me, Patricia said. I have a proposition. For the next hour, she laid out a plan that made my head spin. By the time I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Back at Boston Metro, I found Rachel and Lily waiting with news. We've been analyzing the symposium registrations, Rachel said, pulling up a spreadsheet. Remember James's request for that private meeting room? We cross-referenced the guest list. They're all investors, specifically investors who Shaw has recently approached about his new trauma center project. Lily picked up the thread. But here's the interesting part. We also found a pattern of small stock purchases in several medical companies affiliated with Boston Metro, spread across different shell corporations, clearly trying to build a position quietly. How much have they accumulated? Just under the threshold that would require public disclosure, Rachel confirmed. They're planning to reveal it during James's presentation, make it look like they already have significant stakeholder support. I smiled, thinking of my conversation with Patricia. What if we could turn that strategy against them? I outlined what I'd learned. Their eyes widened as the implications became clear. It's risky, Lily cautioned. If it backfires, everything worth doing is risky, I replied, remembering all the times James had used fear of risk to keep me in check. But this time, we're not just risking failure, we're betting on something better. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Looking forward to catching up before my presentation. For old time's sake. I showed it to Lily and Rachel. He's getting confident, Rachel observed. Are you going to meet him? Lily asked. Yes, I said, looking out at the Boston skyline. But not alone. The coffee shop on Newbury Street hadn't changed in 7 years. Same exposed brick, same oversized windows, same corner table where James used to hold court with his residents. As I walked in, I spotted him immediately, reading something on his tablet, his usual macchiato cooling beside him. I'd chosen to arrive exactly 7 minutes late. Not enough to be rude, but enough to show I wasn't operating on his schedule anymore. His head snapped up as I approached, and for a split second, I caught something in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe fear. It vanished behind his practiced smile. "Maya," he said, standing. "You look successful. Amazing what 7 years of freedom can do," I replied, remaining standing. "This won't take long, James. I have a hospital to run." His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Ah, yes, your trauma program. Quite a step up from the research position you left." I thought of Patricia's words about her daughter, of Dr. Kim's warnings, of Lily's recordings. James was playing his usual game, trying to diminish, to control the narrative. Why did you really want to meet James? To remind me of my place? Or to make sure I still remember how to feel small? He leaned back, studying me with those calculating eyes I used to find intimidating. "I'm concerned about you, Maya. This program of yours has grown beyond your experience, the responsibilities, the liability. I'd hate to see you crushed under the weight of it all, like how Patricia Morrison crushed your pediatric cardiac program when she had you removed from her daughter's case." The shot landed. His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "You've been talking to people. It's amazing how many people are willing to share their stories once someone starts listening." I pulled out my phone, setting it on the table. "Is that what this is about, James? Collecting evidence to make me look incompetent? We both know you're better than petty revenge." "You're right," I agreed, watching confusion flicker across his face. "This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. Something you never quite understood." I pulled out a folder. "Your keynote slot has been moved to the main auditorium. Full attendance. Live stream to every major medical center in New England. You'll have everyone's complete attention." "How generous of you," he said dryly, but I caught the calculating look. This was what he wanted, a bigger platform. "I'm not finished. You'll also have some special guests in the audience. The board members from Shaw Medical Partners, Dr. Patricia Morrison, and her foundation team. And," I paused for effect, "the medical journalists who've been investigating patterns of dismissive care and surgical bullying." The color drained from his face. "The old Maya wouldn't dare," I said. She was too afraid, too convinced of her own inadequacy. "But here's the thing, James. After years of someone telling you you're nothing without them, eventually you have to decide, believe them, or prove them wrong." I stood, gathering my things. "Your choice is simple. Withdraw from the symposium quietly, end your arrangement with Shaw, and we all move forward. Or what? Or you take that stage tomorrow and present your case about emotion-driven surgical failure. But understand this, if you do, you won't be the only one with a story to tell. Every resident you've belittled, every patient outcome you've twisted, every career you've tried to destroy, all of those stories will be heard." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "You really think you've won, don't you? That you've outsmarted me?" His laugh was ugly. "You forget, Maya. I taught you everything you know about surgery." I looked back at him, feeling an unexpected mixture of pity and clarity. "No, James. You taught me everything you know about surgery. I learned the rest on my own. I learned that caring about patients isn't weakness, that listening to fear, theirs and mine, isn't incompetence, that the surgeons who scare me aren't the ones who feel too much, but the ones who feel nothing at all." As I walked out, my phone buzzed with messages. Lily confirming our key supporters were ready. Rachel reporting symposium security was briefed. Dr. Kim sending final documentation. But it was Patricia Morrison's message that made me smile. "Foundation board approval complete. Ready when you are." The morning of the symposium dawned bright and cold, the kind of October day that makes Boston beautiful. I'd arrived at the convention center before sunrise, needing to feel the quiet of the empty hall before the chaos. Standing on the main stage, I looked out at rows of empty seats that would soon hold hundreds of surgeons, medical students, and healthcare leaders. My phone buzzed. "Lily, Shaw's people are already here, trying to schedule last-minute meetings with potential investors." I smiled. Some things never changed. Create urgency, divide attention, force rushed decisions. "Let them," I typed back. "Everyone knows the plan." Rachel met me backstage, tablet in hand. Security caught someone trying to access our AV control room earlier. One of Shaw's tech people, claiming he needed to check equipment. They're getting desperate. Any word from James? His assistant confirmed he's on his way. But Maya. Rachel hesitated. Marcus Johnson called. He said James prepared a video presentation, interviews with former patients, edited to make it look like compassionate care leads to worse outcomes. I checked my watch. 2 hours until keynote. Thank you, Marcus, I murmured, thinking of the nurse practitioner who'd finally stood up to James's system. For everything, I found Dr. Kim and Patricia Morrison waiting in my office. Shaw's representatives are getting aggressive, Patricia reported. They're telling potential donors they have evidence of poor outcomes at Boston Metro. Let them, I said, surprising everyone. In fact, let's make it easier. I turned to Rachel. Move James's presentation up. Give him the opening keynote slot. But that ruins our timing. No, I interrupted. It gives him exactly what he wants. First word, maximum impact. He'll present his evidence, make his accusations, commit fully to his narrative. I pulled up the schedule. And then we respond with truth. Understanding dawned on their faces. Dr. Kim smiled. Make him overplay his hand. Exactly. He'll be so focused on discrediting compassionate care that he won't see what's really happening until it's too late. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the windows, I could see James arriving, surrounded by Shaw's people and several serious-looking men in suits. Lawyers, probably. Maya, Lily said softly. Once this starts, I know. I watched James working the crowd, commanding attention, playing the role of the distinguished surgeon. You know what I realized? He never actually taught me about medicine. He taught me about power, how to wield it, how to fear it, how to let it consume you. But true power isn't about control. It's about creation. It's about building something so strong that it can withstand any attack, because its foundation isn't fear, it's trust. The auditorium hummed with anticipation as James took the stage. He looked exactly as I remembered from countless medical conferences. Confident, commanding, completely in control. The massive screens behind him displayed his credentials alongside Shaw Medical Partners' logo. From my position in the wings, I could see everything. Patricia Morrison in the front row, Dr. Kim a few seats down, Lily coordinating with our team, and Vincent Shaw, smirking in the VIP section. The room was packed. This was the audience James had always craved. Excellence in surgery, James began, his voice carrying that familiar authority, is often misunderstood. People think it's about compassion, about connecting with patients, but true surgical excellence is about objectivity, about making decisions based on evidence, not emotion. My hands tightened on my notes. Classic James, positioning himself as the voice of science against dangerous sentiment. I've watched this field change, he continued, clicking to a slide showing Boston Metro's logo. Watched new programs emerge with grand ideas about patient-centered care and compassionate medicine. But when we look at the data, the screens shifted to carefully edited statistics. Minor complications presented as major failures. Several audience members leaned forward, concerned. Today, I'm here to present a case study about the dangers of emotion-driven surgical decisions. About what happens when we prioritize feelings over protocols. He clicked to the next slide. Patient outcomes, graphs designed to mislead. I caught Lily's eye. She gave me a subtle nod, everything proceeding as predicted. Which is why Shaw Medical Partners and I are pleased to announce a new initiative to restore evidence-based practices to Boston's trauma care system. Is that what you call it, James? My voice cut through the auditorium like a scalpel. Evidence-based practice? I stepped onto the stage. For a moment, just a moment, I saw genuine fear flash across his face. Dr. Chen, he recovered quickly, smoothing his tie. I was just getting to the part about your contributions to the field. Were you? I moved to center stage, picking up a remote. Before or after you explained how you've been secretly buying shares in our partnered medical facilities. Before or after you revealed your 3-year campaign to undermine Boston Metro. The screens behind him shifted, showing the documentation Marcus had provided. Emails, meeting notes, Shaw's acquisition strategy, all of it. This can be explained. Or maybe you were going to explain the real statistics. Another click, and the screens showed the true data. Boston Metro's trauma program has a 97% patient satisfaction rating. Our surgical complication rate is 40% below national average. Our resident retention is the highest in New England. These are the numbers you chose not to share. Shaw stood up, signaling his lawyers. This is inappropriate. We have a legitimate partnership to announce. You have a desperate acquisition attempt, I corrected. But you chose the wrong program and the wrong leader. I turned to address the audience directly. James is right about one thing. This is about evidence. So, let's look at it. I nodded to Lily, who pressed a button on her tablet. The screens changed to show real patient testimonials, outcome data, innovation metrics. But the most important evidence, I continued, watching James's composure crack, happened about an hour ago. Patricia Morrison stood up. The Morrison Foundation, along with a consortium of patient advocacy groups and ethical medical investors, has just acquired controlling interest in Shaw Medical Partners. The room erupted. Shaw's face went pale. We've been watching both Dr. Park's department and Shaw's acquisition patterns, Patricia continued. The pattern of dismissive care, the prioritization of profit over patients, the systematic undermining of compassionate medical programs. It ends today. James stumbled forward. You can't, this isn't possible? I finished. Funny, you used to say the same thing about my chances of becoming a surgeon. I clicked once more. The screens showed the transformation plan, not just for Shaw's company, but for the entire approach to surgical education in New England. You see, James, you did teach me something valuable. You taught me exactly what kind of surgeon I didn't want to be. Someone who builds their reputation by making others feel incompetent. Someone so afraid of being surpassed that they try to clip everyone else's wings. The room was utterly silent, but here's what you never understood. Excellence in surgery isn't about eliminating emotion. It's about channeling it into better care. It's not about controlling the narrative. It's about listening to every voice, especially the ones you've spent your career silencing. I turned back to the audience. Boston Metro isn't for sale, but we are announcing a new partnership with the Morrison Foundation. Together, we're launching the largest compassionate surgical care program in the country's history. The screens showed the complete story. James's systematic undermining attempts alongside Boston Metro's rise, patient testimonials, resident feedback, the data he'd tried to bury. Our first initiative will be the Compassionate Excellence Fellowship, training the next generation of surgeons who understand that caring deeply doesn't make you weak. It makes you better. And our first case study will be about recognizing and overcoming dismissive care practices. James lunged for the microphone, but Dr. Kim was faster, stepping between us. I think, Dr. Kim said quietly, it's time for you to step down, James. As security escorted James and Shaw's team out, I addressed the audience one final time. True surgical excellence isn't about power over others. It's about empowering ourselves and our patients. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply stand up and tell the truth. The applause that followed wasn't just approval, it was recognition. In every face in that audience, I saw someone who had their own story of being dismissed, being told they cared too much, felt too deeply, weren't objective enough. As I left the stage, Lily hugged me fiercely. That, she whispered, was better than any revenge. I watched James being led out, his carefully constructed image crumbling. He caught my eye one last time, and I felt nothing but peace. He had taught me about limitations, about fear, about what happens when power becomes more important than purpose, but I had taught myself about freedom. The rest of the symposium passed in a blur of congratulations, media interviews, and excited planning sessions. By evening, when the last attendees were leaving, I finally had a moment alone in my office, watching the sunset paint the Charles River in shades of gold. My phone kept buzzing. Every major medical publication wanted interviews. The fellowship program already had 50 applications. Patricia's foundation reported that 3 other hospitals wanted to implement similar initiatives, but it was a simple text from Dr. Kim that meant the most. Your mother would be proud. So am I. Rachel appeared in the doorway. Just got word. James's hospital issued a statement. He stepped down as department head, They're restructuring with a focus on inclusive patient care, and Shaw Medical Partners? Their stock dropped 30%. The SEC opened an investigation into their acquisition practices. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall. But I felt something else. Clarity about what came next. A young woman appeared behind Rachel, looking nervous but determined. Dr. Chen? I'm Dr. Nina Patel. I was one of Dr. Park's residents. My chest tightened. How many people had James hurt? I wanted you to know, Nina continued, that what you did today, it wasn't just about stopping an acquisition. For 3 years, I've been told I'm too soft for surgery, that my instinct to comfort patients is unprofessional. I almost quit medicine entirely. She smiled, tentative. The foundation board just asked me to help develop the fellowship curriculum. They said, my perspective, my softness, is exactly what the program needs. After Nina left, Lily came in with tea. You know what I remember most from when you left James? You said you didn't know who you were without him. And now, I said slowly, I know exactly who I am. Someone who builds rather than breaks. Someone who lifts others instead of limiting them. Someone who finally understands that the best response to being underestimated is to help others realize their own worth. Later that night, I found an old photo that Marcus had included in his documentation. James and me at a medical conference years ago. I was seated slightly behind him, smile fixed, trying to take up as little space as possible. I put the photo in my drawer, not as a reminder of pain but as a marker of distance traveled. The woman in that photo had believed in limitations, in careful compliance, in making herself small. The woman I am now believes in possibility. My phone lit up with one final message, this time from Patricia. Ready to start changing medicine tomorrow? I smiled, typing back. Not all of medicine, just the parts we can reach. As I headed out, I paused in the empty auditorium. The stage where everything had changed was quiet now, but I could still feel the energy of the day, the moment when truth finally spoke louder than fear. James had always said that surgery was about power. He was right about that, but wrong about what power really means. Real power isn't in making others fear you or in controlling their careers. It's in helping them find their voice, their strength, their moment to realize they were always capable of more than they believed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that excellence doesn't have to come at the cost of compassion. But tonight, standing in the quiet of this moment, I felt nothing but gratitude. For the journey, for the lessons, and most of all, for finally understanding a truth that no one could take from me. I am enough. I always was. And now I get to help others realize they are too. That's not just success. That's legacy.